The knock on our barracks door at 0300 wasn't unusual. Someone always forgot their key, but when I opened it, I nearly had a heart attack. Staff Sergeant Martinez stood there in civilian clothes. The same Martinez whose funeral I'd attended, whose flag I'd helped fold, whose name was on our memorial wall. "Where's Stevens?" he asked calmly, too calmly. Behind him stood 3 other dead soldiers. Stevens had been selling their identities while they were on classified missions, telling families they'd died, pocketing the death benefits through a network of accomplices. Now the dead had come to collect. Welcome to the channel where military honor meets criminal betrayal. Hit subscribe for a story of stolen valor from inside the barracks. Let me tell you how my bunkmate built an empire on fake military deaths. My name is Corporal Jason Mitchell, 11 Bravo, stationed at Fort Hood. Tyler Stevens was assigned as my bunkmate in March 2022. Specialist, admin clerk, the kind of guy who kept his area inspection ready without being told. Quiet, professional, always on his laptop, doing what he called financial planning. In the Army, you don't question the quiet ones who don't cause problems. Stevens had a gift for paperwork, could process any form, navigate any system. Soldiers paid him to do their taxes, immigration papers, VA claims. $50 here, 100 there. Legitimate side hustle, or so we thought. He knew every regulation, every loophole, every form number by heart. Information is power, he'd say. And in the Army, paperwork is everything. Our room was prime real estate, corner unit, extra space. Stevens had 3 monitors set up, external hard drives, a printer that worked overtime. Side he was taking online classes, getting his degree in business administration. The CQ never bothered us. Stevens helped everyone with admin problems. He was the guy who could unfuck your pay issues, fix your BA, get your orders amended. Valuable friend to have. He had this system with colored folders. Red for urgent, blue for processing, green for completed. Meticulous records of everything. I admired his organization. My side of the room looked like a tornado hit it. His looked like a Fortune 500 office. Should have been my first clue. No specialist needs that much organization for online classes. What I didn't know was that Stevens had been stationed at Fort Hood for 6 years. Unusual for enlisted. Most get PCS orders every 3 years. But Stevens had connections, knew how to make himself essential. The S1 shop couldn't function without him. He'd built relationships, gathered information, created dependencies. He wasn't planning to leave until his business was complete. The first sign something was off came in June 2022. Stevens was on the phone, hushed but agitated. "No, the death certificate needs to show combat related. That's extra $100,000 in benefits." I assumed he was helping some Gold Star family with paperwork. Stevens was known for that, helping grieving families navigate the bureaucracy. St. Stevens, they called him. July brought more strange conversations. Martinez is perfect. Single. No kids, parents in Mexico. They'll never check. I was half asleep, figured he was talking about some training exercise. Stevens was always involved in planning. But then came the folders. New ones, black, kept in a locked drawer. He'd work on them late at night, screen tilted away from my view. One night, I caught a glimpse. Military ID cards spread across his desk. All had deceased stamped in red. He was photographing them, uploading to some database. Memorial project. He explained when he saw me looking. Digitizing records for the base historian. Made sense. Stevens was always volunteering for extra duties. The Good Soldier. August 2022. Stevens started meeting with civilians off base. Well-dressed people who didn't look military. Financial advisors, he said. setting up my post-army career. They'd hand him envelopes. He'd hand them folders. Quick exchanges in the parking lot. I minded my own business. Rule 1 in the barracks. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. The money started showing. New laptop, expensive watch, designer. Clothes he'd only wear off base. Crypto investing, he explained. Got lucky with Bitcoin. Soldiers always had side hustles. Some did Uber. Some sold supplements. Stevens apparently did crypto. Who was I to judge? He still did his duty, still helped with paperwork, still maintained standards. October 2022 revealed the scope. Stevens was drunk, rare for him. Started bragging. You know how much a military death is worth? Between life insurance, death gratuity, survivor benefits? $500K minimum. More if it's combat related. I laughed, thought he was being morbid. Now imagine, he continued, if you could create deaths. Soldiers who aren't really dead. Just on paper. He explained his system. Target soldiers on classified deployments. Special ops, intelligence, deep. Cover assignments. Soldiers whose families wouldn't hear from them for months. Create death certificates. File the claims. Collect the benefits through proxy families. By the time the soldier surfaces, money's gone, trail's cold. Victimless. Crime, Stevens claimed. Government pays out. Families get rich. Soldiers still alive. The network was extensive. Stevens had people in S1 shops across multiple bases. Admin clerks who could alter records. A guy at the VA who'd approve claims without verification. Someone at DFAS who'd process payments. Civilians on the outside who'd play grieving families. Everyone got a cut. Stevens got the biggest piece. He was the architect. He showed me a ledger once, drunk enough not to care. 50 names, 50 dead soldiers, each worth between $300,000 and $1 million, depending on circumstances. Combat deaths paid more. Special operations paid most. Stevens had killed an entire platoon of Rangers who were actually in Syria. Their families were collecting benefits while they conducted missions. The beauty, Stevens explained, is the Army's own secrecy. Classified missions mean no communication. Families accept the death because the Army says they can't know details. Matters of national security. They grieve, collect benefits, move on. Meanwhile, soldiers in some cave in Afghanistan, no idea he's been buried at Arlington. November 10th, 2022. First crack in Stevens' system. Private Chun from Alpha Company walked into the PX. Problem was, Chun had been killed 3 months earlier. Died in Iraq, according to Stevens' records. His widow had already collected $400,000 in benefits. Chun was supposed to be on a classified mission until December. He'd returned early. Stevens went into damage control. Convinced Chun it was an administrative error. Happens all the time, he assured. We'll fix your records, get you back pay. Chun was young, trusted the system. Stevens corrected the mistake, made Chun whole financially, crisis averted. But he was rattled. Started making calls, checking on his other deaths. More problems emerged. Sergeant Johnson's wife called the base. Her husband was listed as dead, but she'd just gotten an email from him. Stevens intercepted the call, blamed it on a system glitch. Promised to investigate. Johnson was in Africa, wouldn't be back for months. Stevens had time to cover tracks. But the system was failing. He started drinking more. Paranoid about his locked drawers. Installed a camera to watch his desk when he was gone. People steal in the barracks, he justified. But I knew he was scared. The network was too big. Too many people involved. Too many chances for exposure. The dead were restless. December brought the worst news. 3 soldiers from a Delta Force unit were returning early from Syria. All 3 were in Stephen's ledger. All 3 had been buried with honors. Their families had collected millions in combined benefits. Stevens couldn't cover this up with administrative errors. The dead were coming home. January 3rd, 2023, 0300 hours. The knock that changed everything. I opened the door to find Staff Sergeant Martinez. Clean-shaven, civilian clothes, very much alive. I'd been to his funeral in September. Watched his mother collapse at the graveside. His name was on our memorial wall. Where's Stevens? His voice was ice. Behind Martinez stood 3 more dead soldiers. Sergeant Kim, Specialist Thompson, Private First Class Rodriguez, all supposedly Kiar in the last year. All very much alive and very pissed off. We need to talk to Stevens now. I pointed to his bunk. Stevens was already awake, laptop open, trying to delete files. Don't even think about it, Martinez said, closing the laptop. We know everything. The death certificates, the benefits, the families you created. Stevens went white, tried to run. Rodriguez blocked the door. These weren't admin clerks. These were combat soldiers who just discovered they'd been declared dead while fighting for their country. Martinez explained how they'd found out. Kim's wife had remarried, thinking she was a widow. Thompson's parents had sold his childhood home with the death benefits. Rodriguez's girlfriend had attempted suicide from grief, all based on Stevens' lies. They'd returned from classified missions to find their lives destroyed. Families traumatized, benefits stolen. Here's what's going to happen, Martinez said. You're going to write down every name, every accomplice, every fake family member, every dollar stolen. Stevens shook his head. I need a lawyer. Kim laughed. You need a medic if you don't start writing. The threat was clear. These men had killed for their country. Stevens was just another enemy. Stevens broke, spent 3 hours detailing his operation. 73 soldiers killed over 2 years. 52 still believed dead. 21 had returned to find their lives in chaos. $30 million in fraudulent benefits paid out. The network included 15 administrative personnel across 6 bases. 23 civilians acting as family members. 3 VA employees. 2 DFAS workers. The system was brilliant in its simplicity. Target single soldiers or those with families overseas. Create training accident or classified mission deaths. File paperwork through corrupted clerks. Have fake families collect benefits. Families got 60%. Network got 30%. Stevens got 10%. His cut, $3 million sitting in offshore accounts. He'd recruited specifically. Looked for soldiers with financial problems, gambling debts, messy divorces. Offered them a way out. One signature, $50,000 in your pocket. Most justified it as victimless. Government wastes billions, they'd say. This is just recovery. Never thinking about the real soldiers who'd come home to devastation. The fake families were actors, essentially. Hired through dark web forums. Given scripts, coached on military culture. They'd attend fake funerals, cry for cameras, collect folded flags, then cash checks and disappear. One woman had played 5 different military mothers. Collected $2 million in combined benefits. Oscar-worthy performances. Stevens had thought he was untouchable. The military bureaucracy was too slow, too compartmentalized. By the time anyone noticed, he'd be gone. Retired to some non-extradition country. I was 6 months from pulling the plug, he admitted. Just needed 5 more high-value targets. Special Forces soldiers worth maximum benefits. Martinez gave Stevens 2 options. Turn himself in with full cooperation, or they'd handle it themselves. Personally, I vote for option 2, Rodriguez said, cracking knuckles. Stevens chose option 1. Martinez called Sid, while Kim and Thompson stood guard. Rodriguez went through. Stevens' files, documenting everything. Sid arrived within an hour. Special Agent Walker, a former ranger, understood immediately. Holy shit, this is nationwide. They seized everything. Computers, drives, documents. Stevens' side of the room became a crime scene. I was questioned for 6 hours. Cleared, but barely. Living with Stevens made me suspect by association. The arrests happened simultaneously across the country. Coordinated raids at 0600. 15 bases, 43 arrests. The network collapsed in a single morning. News crews showed up. Largest military fraud in history. Stevens became the face of stolen valor. His photo next to every article about betraying fellow soldiers. The civilian accomplices were harder to catch. Many had disappeared with their payouts, but the FBI joined the hunt. Financial crimes plus impersonating military families crossed into federal territory. One by one, they found them. The actress who'd played grieving mothers, the businessman who'd laundered payments, the website developer who'd created fake memorial pages. The real victims were the soldiers who'd returned from classified missions. Kim's wife had remarried thinking she was a widow. The marriage was void, but the trauma remained. Thompson's parents had spent his death benefits on medical bills. Now they owed the government $400,000 they didn't have. Rodriguez's entire family had grieved for nothing. Psychological damage that money couldn't fix. Stevens' trial was a sensation. Military court. Federal charges pending. 73 counts of fraud. 15 counts of identity theft. Conspiracy, forgery, conduct unbecoming. The prosecution presented 3 weeks of evidence. The defense had nothing. Stevens pled guilty to avoid life in prison. The other conspirators turned on each other. Admin clerks blamed Stevens for manipulation. Stevens blamed the VA employees for suggesting the scheme. Everyone pointed fingers. No one took responsibility. The judge called it the most despicable betrayal of military brotherhood he'd seen in 30 years. Testimonies from the affected soldiers were devastating. Martinez described returning from Syria to find his name on a tombstone. His mother had aged 10 years from grief. Kim's wife needed therapy to process her widowhood. Thompson lost his security clearance because officially dead people can't have them. Career destroyed by paperwork. The financial damage was staggering. $30 million in fraudulent payouts. Cost of investigation, $5 million. Cost of correcting records, $2 million. Lawsuits from affected families, pending but estimated at $50 million. Stevens had created an administrative nightmare that would take years to fully resolve. Sentencing came down hard. Stevens got 25 years at Leavenworth. No possibility of parole for 15. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all pay and benefits. Restitution of $30 million he'd never be able to pay. The judge wanted to send a message. Betraying fellow soldiers while they served would not be tolerated. Fort Hood implemented new verification systems. Death. Reports now required multiple confirmations. Benefit payments delayed pending investigation. The bureaucracy got worse, but fraud became harder. Stevens had ruined it for legitimate Gold Star families who now faced extra scrutiny during their worst moments. I got a new bunkmate. Quiet guy, kept to himself. No computers, no side hustles. We didn't talk much. Trust was gone. Everyone suspected everyone. The barracks became paranoid. Who else was running scams? Who could you trust? Stevens had poisoned the well of brotherhood. Soldiers struggled to rebuild. Some left the army, unable to continue after the betrayal. Others channeled anger into purpose, becoming advocates for fraud prevention. Martinez started a nonprofit helping soldiers protect their identities. Kim became a seed investigator specializing in internal fraud. Stevens' family disowned him. His parents, both veterans, were devastated. His brother, active duty Marine, changed his last name. The shame was unbearable. Stevens had dishonored not just himself, but his entire military lineage. His name became synonymous with betrayal in military circles. The recovered money was minimal. Most had been spent or hidden. Fake families disappeared into civilian world. Offshore accounts proved unreachable. The government ate the loss. Taxpayers footed the bill for Stevens' greed. The only winners were the lawyers who got rich on the lawsuits. My name is Jason Mitchell. I lived with evil and didn't recognize it. Stevens taught me that the enemy isn't always foreign. Sometimes he shares your room, borrows your phone charger, helps with your paperwork. Sometimes betrayal comes with a smile and a helpful attitude. The Army talks about trust. Trust your battle buddy. Trust your chain of command. Trust the system. Stevens weaponized that trust. Used it to kill 73 soldiers who were serving their country. Made families grieve for nothing. Destroyed lives for profit. All from a laptop in our barracks room. The dead soldiers who returned that night were the heroes. Martinez could have killed Stevens, would have been justified in many minds. Instead, he chose justice over vengeance. Let the system Stevens had corrupted be his punishment. 25 years to think about his betrayal. I still see their faces sometimes. The dead soldiers standing in our doorway at 0300. Back from the grave Stevens had dug for them. They looked tired, angry, but mostly confused. How could a fellow soldier do this? How could someone who wore the same uniform sell their deaths? Stevens is in Leavenworth now, isolated from general population for his own safety. Even criminals have codes, and stealing from soldiers violates them all. He writes letters sometimes, claiming innocence, blaming others. No one responds. He's dead to us now. Ironically, the only death he successfully completed was his own. To my fellow soldiers. Watch your six, even in the barracks. Protect your personal information like classified material. Verify your records regularly. The enemy might be processing your paperwork. Trust, but verify. Always verify. The knock at 0300 saved more than just those 4 soldiers. It exposed a cancer in our ranks. Stevens thought the dead couldn't speak. He was wrong. The dead came knocking, and justice answered.